So I first met Artt Frank through a Facebook post where I had seen his comment in late September of 2024. And he had mentioned that he was a longtime friend and drummer of Chet Baker. And being a huge Chet Baker fan, I felt like I should reach out and, send him a message and connect with him. That's what I did. So I sent him a message and spoke with him via the phone, and we talked about every day for half hour every other day, and since the first time he called me that evening. And he would tell me his stories with Chet, and he couldn't wait to send me his two books, which he personally wrote, which I was so surprised that he was an author as well. So he sent me his books, and I read those within 2 weeks, and it truly made me feel like I was in the room with Artt and with Chet. It let me know the kind of guy Artt was. And I was so amazed by the first time that I heard Artt play drums on the recording that he had sent me from him and Chet. I believe it was Tune Up off of Burnin' at Backstreet, a live record that he had done with Chet. And it was just so beautiful the way he would melodically play. He would melodically would fill in where Chet would pause between his phrases. And that's the way Artt played. He was such a melodical player, such a lyrical player. And that's because he was such a natural musician. He played without care of what rhythms he was playing. He just knew how to play the rhythms. And he was such a encouraging guy and such a selfless person that at one point I have a small snare drum at home, and I was learning the swing pattern of brushes on my own snare drum. And I had let him know that I had picked up a pair of brushes and said that, I'm learning from his book, Essentials for the Bebop Drummer. And he had told me, he goes, you could have just told me, and I would have sent you a pair. And that's the kind of guy Artt was. He'd give you his last bone in his body if he had to. And that's the kind of guy that I aspire to be. And Artt was such a positive role model on my life. And I went down to Tucson, Arizona after speaking with Artt about possibly coming to visit him. And you could just hear the smiles on in his face, in his tone over the phone, hundreds of miles away, me living in Detroit, and him mentioning that that would be all right with him. So I made the trek down to Tucson, Arizona, and to meet him and his wife Lisa. Only 4 days before Artt passed away, I got to spend time with him and hear his stories and play with him. I'm a trumpet player, and I played one of my favorite tunes and one of his too, Line for Lions. And we played that tune together. And he would tell me different stylistic elements that would help shape my sense of melody and sense of feel and rhythm. And I can't forget the minute I walked into his house. Felt like walking into a family member's house, almost like a grandfather's house that you haven't seen in a long time. And I walked in, and he was sitting there in his chair, smiling ear to ear, and he goes, "I've got a surprise for you." So he showed me his homemade CD that he had made for me and given that to me, which was Burnin' at Backstreet by him and Chet, and also a CD by his group, a tribute to Chet Baker. And I'll never forget that minute. I'll never forget that moment where I was sitting there with him, and we were listening to jazz, and he would tell me, "Listen to what I do here, listen to what I do here." Such a beautiful man and such a beautiful story.